I just wanted to say that this is such an inspiration, and I'm so honored to be here with you all today. I'm with a national nonprofit called Center for Food Safety, and we're based in Washington, D.C. I'm in the San Francisco office. We're most well known for litigating against biotechnology companies. We're the people that famously sue Monsanto. Thank you. And a few years ago, when I joined Center for Food Safety, my boss, Andy Kimbrell, said, you know, people are always saying, Center for Food Safety, you're against biotech, you're against CAFOs, you're against all these things, so what are you for? And Andy said, well, we're for a stable climate. So those were my instructions to find hope and solutions, which quickly led me to soil. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context for our speakers that are coming up this afternoon and look at how some of the things that we've been talking about connect back to our global food system. The global food system has been ignored as a source of GHGs, but it's also been ignored as a source of solutions. And we came out with a report this spring that you can find online that really is meant to the average. It's meant to be accessible if you're not going to read the IPCC reports and all the ISTAD reports and all the big, thick reports. This is the one that you can share with your friends that will just give you a quick snapshot that gives you sort of an outline of the problems with the industrial system and the possibility of the regenerative organic system. So I'm just going to quickly scroll through some slides about the Anthropocene, which is what we're entering, and some of the climate change manifestations as they relate to our food supply, because all of these things, of course, have great implications for food production. And I'm talking about really crop agriculture. About 90% of the world's calories come from crop agriculture and from animal agriculture, and about 10% come from aquaculture, from fisheries. So I'm not really going to cover fisheries. This is a slide that I put together because I wanted to see, once you start aggregating these things, what happens. So when you have these extreme weather events across the country, if you start looking at it, in aggregate, it really does start to impact our food supply now. The solid bar is actual, and the dots are projected. And certainly in California, where I'm from, we have had just this epic drought. And we finally just got a little rain last week, and people were practically singing in the streets in Northern California. I'm not quite sure how far south it went. But of course, we grow over 400 fruits and vegetables, and the farmers have really had to rethink a lot of things. There are some crops that are particularly thirsty, like almonds, that people love almonds, but they take a lot of water, and when you don't have the water, what do you do? So within this Anthropocene that we're seeing, there is this oscillation between deluge and drought, and again, that has implications for not only growing food, but the food supply itself. We have shifting weather patterns. Now, why is this important? Well, we know that food has to have a certain stable climate. So certain things like coffee will only grow. It tends to favor the equatorial region of the globe. Some mountainous coffees are grown at high elevation, but you're not typically growing coffee in Manitoba. Likewise, avocados. You can't grow avocados in very northern climates. Chill hours are important for stone fruit. In California, we grow a lot of apricots and plums and peaches and so forth. If they don't get the requisite number of cold hours, the fruit's not going to set. So those plants will have to start growing further and further north. And then, of course, we've covered a lot about the rising temperatures. So I just want to spend a few minutes on this slide and This information comes from an organization in Barcelona called GRAIN. We just took their information and aggregated it. And these are some of the drivers, because a lot of people, when they think about the food system, they don't think of its impacts on climate because they're thinking of the on-farm production. And that production piece is a slice of the pie, but if you look at it in its totality and you take into consideration some of the things we were talking about earlier with the expansion of, say, palm oil plantation, driving deforestation in Indonesia and Malaysia, and now India and some other places, and add that in, because why are they cutting the forest? Well, to put in these monocultures or to graze cattle. And then the on-farm inputs, the food waste. This is an issue I'm very happy to say is finally getting a lot of well-deserved, overdue attention, but up to 40% of the food that's grown in the world is not even eaten. And that's a waste of not only human labor, but of course of water resources, soil, all the inputs, all the energy, and not to mention all the hungry people that aren't being fed. And there are different reasons for food waste, but in this country, when we do waste food, it comes back to haunt us often in the landfill because we don't tend to compost it. So there's a huge opportunity to take a big slice out of our methane emissions by having a national composting movement so that we would recycle those nutrients back in. And then, of course, processing, transportation, and so forth. So in totality, it could be as much as half of our GHGs are coming from the current system. I like to call this quickly my elevator pitch. If you talk to the average person and you tell them they know about CO2, too much in the atmosphere, too much in the oceans, not enough in the soil, that's our opportunity. That's where the soils are actually starving for this. We do a lot of infographics, a lot of little short movies and reports and so forth, trying to communicate these messages somewhat along the lines of what we heard last night from the carbon underground. So we see this soil health as the key to solving multiple problems. We've heard a lot about systems, and if we just are very intentional about our food choices because they have such large implications, we can solve so many problems simultaneously. And the wonderful thing about this whole movement is it's low risk, low cost, has universal application, and there's really no downside to it. Here's a little graphic that we use quite a bit. We've done a refrigerator magnet on it that shows you that this healthy soil has these multiple benefits. So even if people could care less about climate, they're certainly going to care about food. They may care about water. So we're part of this emerging community, and I just wanted to thank you all once again for helping us to disseminate this critical message. And then I'd like to turn it over to my fellow panel members. And first we're going to hear from John Carroll. He's the professor of environmental conservation at the University of New Hampshire, and he will be followed by Ridge Shin, who is a rancher and a market innovator and health advocate. And then finally we're going to hear from Tom Newmark, who's the co-founder and chair of the Carbon Underground. So without further ado, thank you.